Could Americans soon start getting $2,000 a month from the government? Some Congress members say that's what's needed to save the economy. I'm Trevor Shirley in Washington. I've got that story coming up.
I'm Alexandra Limon in Washington. Because of the ongoing shortages of medical masks, the federal government says hospitals can now reuse them. I'll explain how they'll do it safely coming up.
Democrats say the coronavirus crisis has highlighted the need for Medicaid expansion in all 50 states, but not everyone is on board. I'm Jesse Tenor in Washington, and I'll have that story coming up.
I'm Raquel Martin in Washington. U.S. Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue tells me he's just steps away from finalizing a multi-billion-dollar aid package to help farmers impacted by the coronavirus. I'll have that full story coming up.
I'm Morgan Wright in Washington. Coming up, why some dairy farmers are being forced to dump their milk and how lawmakers plan to address that issue.
The battle continues, but the data suggests that nationwide we have passed the peak on new cases. Hopefully that will continue, and we will continue to make great progress. These encouraging developments have put us in a very strong position to finalize guidelines for states on reopening the country, which we'll be announcing. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow. We'll be having a news conference tomorrow sometime during the afternoon. We're going to be announcing guidelines, and we'll be talking about various states, and it's very exciting. It's been a horrible time to see such death and destruction, especially when you come out of what was the greatest economy in the history of the world, the greatest. There's never been an economy like what we had produced, but we'll produce it again.
Ohio Democratic Representative Tim Ryan says to save the economy, almost every American making less than $130,000 a year needs a monthly $2,000 payment from the government.
And it stays in place every single month until the unemployment rate gets back to where it was pre-COVID-19.
His proposed legislation also covers college students and senior citizens, along with $500 for all dependents under 16.
So if you want a quick recovery, to me, this is the best way to do it.
$1,200 emergency stimulus payments from the CARES Act started arriving this week, but Ryan says that's not enough to guarantee long-term stability.
It's got to be more bold, more robust, and more directly into the pockets of the American people.
But already some conservative groups say Ryan's idea does more harm than good.
And I think we need to look at the cost of this. This would be $500 billion plus per month in additional spending.
The Heritage Foundation's Joel Griffith says targeted payments to the unemployed is a better solution.
Going ahead and dropping money helicopter style, that just saddles all of us with that erodes the value of our dollar.
But Ryan says he's hopeful Republicans will get on board.
We've made adjustments to really work on getting it down to the grassroots level, and I hope that appeals to a lot of the conservative Republicans.
He wants a vote in the House once Congress returns to Washington. Reporting in Washington, I'm Trevor Shirley.
The FDA issued emergency approval to decontaminate and reuse N95 medical masks.
To my knowledge, it may be the first time that it's been executed with N95 masks in particular, but it has proven to be very effective.
Sean Powell is with Premier Inc., a healthcare group of about 4,000 hospitals and clinics. Powell says the decontamination of masks is necessary because of the unprecedented demand.
We're on pace right now to use somewhere between 150 and likely up to, coming into April, 200 million N95s per year just in the U.S. alone.
The Defense Department plans to deliver 60 decontamination units to cities around the country by May. The department says that will allow up to 4.8 million masks to be decontaminated daily.
Part of the problem is we don't have our arms around the supply chain.
Colorado Congressman Jason Crow and other Democrats say it's deeply troubling that the national stockpile could not provide enough safety equipment in the first place, and they're asking the Health and Human Services Inspector General to investigate and find out why.
And there's an immediate crisis. This stuff is needed right now.
Crow and California Congresswoman Katie Porter sponsored a bill that would force the Trump administration to use the Defense Production Act to purchase additional medical equipment and compel U.S. manufacturers to make more of what's needed. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
Democrats in Congress, like Alabama Senator Doug Jones, say states should pitch in to help fight the coronavirus by expanding their Medicaid coverage under the Affordable Care Act.
Overwhelmingly, the folks that would benefit from Medicaid expansion are hardworking people in Alabama. They just don't make enough to really afford good health care insurance.
Jones and Texas Congressman Colin Allred are hoping to convince their states and 12 others that have yet to expand the program.
Hardworking Texans in our hospitals and our local governments do need a lifeline now more than ever.
Nearly 8 million Americans would gain coverage. Allred says not expanding Medicaid disproportionately affects African American and Latino communities, just like the virus.
During this crisis, I think the stark inequities in our healthcare system have just been exposed even more.
The lawmakers want to include money to fund the expansions for 3 years in the next coronavirus relief package. Republicans from states that have expanded Medicaid, like Arkansas Senator John Bozeman, say now is not the time.
These can't be Christmas trees. These aren't stimulus bills so far. These are survival bills. Right now, I think we really need to stick to that.
But former CMS Administrator Andy Slavitt argues the federal government will have to spend the money either way.
We can spend less if we keep people healthier, or we can spend more if we wait until they get sicker.
So far, President Trump has chosen to give hospitals money to treat uninsured coronavirus patients, rather than encourage states to expand their Medicaid coverage. In Washington, I'm Jessie Tenor.
About $16 billion will go directly to producers.
U.S. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue says he's close to finalizing a massive aid package for farmers hit hard by the coronavirus outbreak.
I'm prepared to present to the president. We hope to do that this week, today or tomorrow.
With business closed, demand slash, and commodity prices tanking, Perdue says he's rushing to get aid out the door to stop the bleeding.
They're all suffering there. There's no doubt. We're trying to be as inclusive as we can be.
Perdue tells me the direct payment will be available to virtually all ag producers, including specialty crop farmers who sell directly to farmers markets. Another $2 billion will go towards purchasing products farmers can't sell and getting them to food banks.
It's really a shame to see milk being dumped and other food, healthy food products being dumped or plowed in when there are people who could use that.
Michigan Republican Congressman Bill Huizenga supports the plan.
We've got to make sure that we're supporting sort of the home team.
But Illinois Democrat Congresswoman Sherry Bustos says without help for the ethanol industry, the plan falls short.
Secretary Perdue and the Trump administration need to look at agriculture from a very broad perspective. There's so much more that needs to be done.
Perdue says the direct payments are just part one of his plan.
We'll have a two-pronged attack on this issue.
He says thanks to the CARES Act, the USDA will have another $14 billion available to assist farmers in July. In Washington, Raquel Martin.
This is probably one of the worst situations dairy's been in a number of years.
New York Congressman Anthony Brindisi says dairy farmers are struggling to deal with excess products after customers around the country closed up shop.
The demand is not among the restaurants or in the school lunch programs as much.
Some producers even decided to dump milk down the drain. Brindisi says there needs to be a better way.
There is an increase in demand among food banks for dairy products. There's a huge demand in grocery stores. Those sales have gone up 40%.
Until Congress can pass more relief, Brindisi is calling on the U.S. Department of Agriculture to step in and help.
It's really a shame to see milk being dumped.
Secretary of Agriculture Sonny Perdue says he has a plan to help struggling farmers.
About $2 billion in taking product off the market, excess product, milk, pork, protein, those things, produce that are buying, delivering to food banks and delivering it to people who need it.
It's absolutely the right step. The question is the scope of that step.
Alan Bierga with the National Milk Producers Federation says he's encouraged by the development, but says money alone won't fix the problem.
They need the purchaser. They need the distribution network. Again, you can keep dairy farmers in business and keep plants operating if you create this mechanism.
Perdue says he is presenting his plan for the president's approval later this week. Reporting in Washington, I'm Morgan Wright.
With the dangers coronavirus brings to people with existing lung issues, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is concerned about the country's coal miners.
These are hardest working people. They've given their life basically for patriotic duty, providing the energy the country has needed.
Both Manchin and Senator Shelley Moore Capito are working to ensure the black lung clinics many miners rely on for care remain open.
These are critical healthcare facilities for our state.
They're going to be able to stay operational too.
Senator Capito says telehealth is another good way to care for black lung patients, but there's an issue holding them back.
The problem we have is we don't have the connectivity in a lot of areas to be able to serve this. So we're also trying to get audio calls where the doctor can call you at your home.
Senator Manchin is asking the Department of Labor and the Department of Health and Human Services for guidelines on the best ways to keep the black lung programs running.
Get to our black lung clinics so they can be maintained and stay in business.
Manchin says answers about how the clinic should operate during the emergency and how miners' benefits will be protected will resolve a lot of the current uncertainty. And both senators say the work of the clinics is too critical to be overlooked during the crisis. Reporting in Washington, I'm Basil John.
Nearly 2 weeks after Captain Brett Crozier was relieved of his duty,
Captain Crozier was absolutely correct in what he did. He was putting his sailors first.
lawmakers on the House Armed Services Committee say Crozier should be reinstated as commander of the USS Theodore Roosevelt.
I think the morale on the ship is such that unless you were to reinstate him, you would have to do some wholesale changes.
Congresswoman Jackie Spears says Crozier's distress letter and emails to naval officials, which were leaked to the public, were not grounds to dismiss him.
I want all of those emails.
She's calling for an independent inspector general to look into why Crozier's original requests for help were ignored. Congressman John Garamendi says he believes Crozier's removal was political.
I believe Modly actually got instructions from the president. Fire that fellow.
Acting Navy Secretary Thomas Modly fired Crozier and then resigned himself after a recording of a profanity-laced tirade that he gave to sailors on board the USS Theodore Roosevelt went viral. And Defense Secretary Mark Esper says the Navy launched an official inquiry.
The investigation was conducted at my direction.
Esper says the Chief of Naval Operations will look into how the virus got onto the ship and Captain Crozier's response.
I don't know where it will go or where it will take us, but I expect it will be comprehensive.
Congresswoman Spear also wants to know what types of personal protective equipment and testing should be mandatory on all naval ships. In Washington, I'm Joe Khalil.
So Ms. Mendez, today is the day you're going home.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Hi guys, my name is Janet Mendez. I've been in the hospital maybe almost a month. Exactly the date I don't remember because it's been so long. But finally they are sending me home. It's been a long journey, especially not for me, but for my family, because they were the one up. They were the one praying. They were the one going every single day through my journey, and while I was sleeping. So I'm much better. People were saying when I came in, I was blue. I remember perfectly well that I looked at my face and I looked like a Smurf. So I got scared, and they were like, okay, we're gonna put you to sleep. Everything was quick, everything was fast. And I had less than 20 minutes to say goodbye to everybody. Tried to get whoever was near me aware that they were exposed to maybe coronavirus.
This is a triumph. A really sick woman who was mortally ill, on the ventilator for 10 days, now off the ventilator, completely recovered and going home to her family. Good. All right.
This arbitrary blanket spread of shutting down businesses about putting all of these workers out of business is just, it's a disaster. It's an economic disaster for Michigan, and people are sick and tired of it, and they're fed up. We have flattened the curve, and we have lessened the pain of this. I know people are still going to get sick, and I think that's horrible. I've personally known people that have passed. But this grip of destruction that Michigan is under right now just feels like bureaucracy. Instead of looking at essential and non-essential, let's start looking at what's safe and unsafe and start getting people back to work. I know it doesn't look like that here today, but it's spring in Michigan. We've all been holed up, behaving very well. Some people want to get out and paint their house. They can't even go order a bucket of paint.
I'm going to issue an executive order that says all people in public must have a mask or nose covering, mouth and nose covering, and they must wear it in a situation where you cannot or are not maintaining social distancing. Lives lost yesterday, 752, which is the painful news of our reality day after day, and they are in our thoughts and prayers. The healthcare situation has stabilized. The fears of overwhelming the healthcare system has not happened. Little reality check. You still have, on a day-to-day basis, about 2,000 people who are being diagnosed with COVID.
Here's how you can make your own face covering in a few easy steps with items you can find around the house, like an old scarf, cloth face covering.
When a brother puts on a mask, then you only are potentially upticking something possibly happening.
He just followed us from outside, told us that we cannot wear masks.
All over Facebook, you can see instances of black men in Walmarts, and 5-0 is following them and throwing them out. But Uncle Sam said wear a mask.
He just followed us from outside, told us that we cannot wear masks. There's a presidential order, there's a state order, and he's following us right now to the store. We're being asked to leave for being safe.
My biggest concern is not catching it and not bringing it home to my mother. That's my biggest concern.
When I go to stores or just out in public, people do stare to say, okay, why doesn't he have on gloves or why doesn't he have on a mask? But at the same time, growing up in this neighborhood, it's difficult for a black male. It doesn't matter what age you are, it's the same thing. It's sad in this day and time that things are like that, but you know, you just gotta roll with the punches sometimes.
The United States of America has been a long-standing and generous friend to WHO, and we hope it will continue to be so. We regret the decision of the President of the United States to order a hold in funding to the World Health Organization. With support from the people and government of the United States, WHO works to improve the health of many of the world's poorest and most vulnerable people. WHO is reviewing the impact of our work, of any withdrawal of US funding, and will work with our partners to fill any financial gaps we face and to ensure our work continues uninterrupted. When we're divided, the virus exploits the cracks between us. We're committed to serving the world's people and to accountability for the resources with which we're entrusted. In due course, WHO's performance in tackling this pandemic will be reviewed by WHO's member states and the independent bodies that are in place to ensure transparency and accountability. For that matter, involving all responders. This is part of the usual process put in place by our member states. No doubt, areas for improvement will be identified, and there will be lessons for all of us to learn. But for now, our focus, my focus, is on stopping this virus and saving lives.
You know, everybody's talking about the photo and everything, and why do we think the photo is so important? We feel like it's just it's a symbol for everybody, because we're all going through the same thing right now. And it's a symbol of hope and love.
That all those trivial things that we were arguing about that morning, in the grand scheme of things, aren't that important. Like, what's important is that we stick together, we work together, and we always support each other. There's definitely a different level of stress during this. So you have your coworkers who are afraid of, you know, is this the day I'm going to get infected? Well, we met in anesthesia school. We were studying nurse anesthesia in 2007, and we actually had to sit in alphabetical order. So we had to sit beside each other every day in class, and it just took off from there.
You know, we had a funny discussion about our two dogs. We're like, if we both get sick, we have to contact our dog walker. Maybe he'll watch our dogs for us if we both have to go to the hospital. We've had that conversation before.
Unless you're here doing this, there's no way to describe it. There's no way to, you know, portray how you feel on a daily basis, but he gets it. So, you know, I definitely think it makes it easier for us.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars